Finally, we are recording the meeting, and this will go up on YouTube in a day or two. So you can obviously share it with your peers there, and that's going to be one of our goals going forward, is to build a growing archive of resources for people interested in astronomy viz. So with that, let me stop sharing that screen and take a moment to introduce our panelists here. And I will simply let we'll go down the line here. Let's start with Melissa Weiss. Please introduce yourself to the community.
Okay, should I share my screen so I can
Sure.
share some images too at the same time? Hi everybody, I'm Melissa Weiss. I go by Mel. I am a science illustrator for NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory, the Center for Astrophysics, and for NRAO. I also do some design work for IPAC. I have a background in art. I got a BFA from the University of Rhode Island, where I met Kim Arcand, who is now working for Chandra. And when we both graduated, she moved on to their department and reached out to me in order to start working on some visuals for their upcoming mission in 1999. So I've been with them since their launch, and I also have a fine art background where I am still using the same ideas that I used as a science illustrator, but I'm thinking about them conceptually and thinking about how to visualize them in ways that aren't meant for education. And yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Good to have you with us, Mel, today. Next, let's go to AJ Christensen.
Hey, so my name's AJ. I am about 15 years into a career in visualizing scientific data. About 12 of those years were spent at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications, where we did a lot of planetarium dome sort of cinematic shows. I took a brief stint at the visual effects company Double Negative to work on the movie Interstellar. I took a brief stint at Anthem Insurance doing healthcare visualization. And now I'm at NASA's Scientific Visualization Studio working on heliophysics and Earth climate visualizations. Oh, and also I'm currently in a graduate degree in the learning sciences, studying how people make meaning in digital environments like movies and games.
Very cool. Thank you for that intro. And then last but not least, Jackie Faherty.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jackie Faherty, and I work at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, which has the Hayden Planetarium within it. It's all the same entity. My background is that right out of undergrad, I decided I didn't want to go straight into a PhD in physics and astronomy, which is what I really wanted. So instead, I entered the education department at the American Museum of Natural History, and I fell in love with all things that were generated in an informal education setting. Highlighted amongst all of them is the presentations that we can do inside of the planetarium itself as such a unique venue. I ran a bunch of different education programs at the museum, and then finally basically hit the glass ceiling as to how far I could go until I got a PhD and moved into a different phase. I got my PhD from Stony Brook, and then I did a postdoc in Chile and a postdoc at the Carnegie Institution for Science before coming back to the museum as a senior scientist, where I basically get to do a hybrid of education work and run this amazing research group and team of folks that I'm constantly working with and on to merge our scientific work with its education potential, and most especially its visualization potential and how it can be brought to life inside of the planetarium.
That's fantastic. I love what incredibly different trajectories, career trajectories everyone has taken to kind of end up in this shared space. And for those who don't know me, I'm Robert Hurt. I'm also an astronomer. I work at Caltech IPAC, and I have been doing science visualization for over 20 years now, initially with from years of NASA's Spitzer Space Telescope. And I've worked with a lot of what I call like the West Coast astrophysics missions. So, but I will be moderating today. And as moderator, let me start with just a round of questions for each of our panelists to give a little more about their background. Mel, let me start with you. I want to ask, like, as an artist, you are coming at this, an artist moving into, working in the science realm. What kind of challenges uniquely do you face when you are collaborating with scientists or press officers and trying to kind of match their needs to what you are trying to bring to the table?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think really the most important part coming into this as an artist is that I really need to build trust between myself and the scientists and the press officers, because mainly the work that I'm doing is for press releases, and I'm a contractor, so my time is limited. So it's really important that that I trust that the team is giving me all of the information that they need to give me, because I don't have the time or hours to do deep dives into the topics, unfortunately. I mean, if I could, that's one help of the press officer, is kind of reining me in sometimes, because I keep wanting to get deeper and deeper, and they're like, okay, we need to get this out. So that's definitely been a challenge. But I mean, over the years, I've been in this for 23 years now. So at this point, I've learned on the job, which has been really, really great. And so I have a better understanding of what the needs are. And a lot of times I'm doing very similar imagery with just minor tweaks to whatever new discoveries are being made. The other challenge I find that might not really be unique to an artist is that a lot of scientists aren't really thinking visually about their work until they get to me, right? So it isn't really until I'm talking to them or I'm giving them sort of their first iteration based on their paper of an image that they're like, oh, wow, I haven't really gotten into the details of what that actually looks like. And so I think that is where maybe as an artist that benefits me, because I think very visually. I don't, I'm not really thinking in words. I'm thinking in shapes and colors and tones and light and shadow and so on and so forth. So I think it winds up being a really beautiful pair between myself and the scientists. I think also the other challenge that I face as an artist, that a lot of time, not a lot of times, but there are times when accuracy does have to come before aesthetics. So there are moments when I'm like, oh, I wish I could like do this instead. And unfortunately, that wouldn't be scientifically accurate. And putting that out in a press release for the general public will just confuse folks.
So what fraction of the battles do you win on aesthetics versus accuracy? Is it?
Honestly, it doesn't happen all that often, because I think what is out there and what I'm, trying to translate is already beautiful in itself. But, I think maybe like, 10% of images, I would love to make other changes if it would make sense to the story that they're trying to tell. But the majority of the time, it all works out.
Awesome. So AJ, how about you? I know, like, before you were working at Goddard, I know you were at NCSA and part of their world-renowned science visualization group, and you have certainly worked on visualizations at all levels. That some are intended for like general audiences with no background, and others are really like built for people who are already instantiated in the science, understand it. How do you approach visualization when you have audiences that can be so wildly different on the two ends of the scale?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of like, I think a lot of people in visualization have internalized that like the very first thing you do when you start a new project is you ask, who is it for? And I think like a lot of us don't even necessarily know why we're asking that. We just know that it's important. But you know, when I started thinking about this recently for my grad degree, and it was like, oh, well, it's because when you're communicating to like a science expert, like someone who already knows the field, you're just reporting information that they understand. But when you're creating a visualization for the public, you're trying to teach them something. You're trying to give them an abstract science concept that they haven't encountered before, and you're trying to get them to a new level of understanding. And the way that you achieve that is like wildly different, right? Like the all the research coming out nowadays is talking more and more about how we use our bodies for cognition. Like we learn things through our bodies. It's not just about like sitting in your chair and thinking really hard. And a lot of this is like, you know, oh, kids should have access to playgrounds. Kids should have access to toys. Like they shouldn't be sitting at desks all the time. But it's relevant for adults and like abstract science learning as well. And basically there's this whole idea of like constructivism that I kind of think of it like a ladder of understanding. Like in order to get to the point of like understanding what, you know, a pair of colliding galaxies means, or you know what your microbiome is, you sort of have to have a bunch of abstract concepts already internalized before you get there. And those abstract concepts are, if you follow the ladder down far enough, are actually based on like experiences you've had with your own body, like things you've touched, a hot stove, or a slimy piece of goo or whatever. And so like all of our like really advanced abstract understanding of the world is based on the things that we've done with our body, which basically tells me like a lot of times people think about the aesthetics of a visualization as wrapping paper, as decoration. But if you're trying to get someone to learn something and to connect these visual metaphors back to physical experiences, the aesthetics are actually more important in a lot of cases than just the facts, the numerals. And like, I think when you're reporting something to an expert, that's less important. Although you could also make the argument that people are always learning. And so even like a scientific expert could probably benefit from aesthetics if you're trying to give them an opportunity to explore more than they already know. But obviously budget then becomes a part of the conversation too. So yeah, anyway, I guess I would say like I really advocate for high aesthetics in public outreach, but maybe less so in communicating to experts.
Well, you made an interesting point. I've been learning more about the term scaffolding that you've been referencing in formal education for building that fundamental knowledge, but I hadn't really had that connection between scaffolding and experiential, like physical, tactile experience. That's an interesting perspective that I have to think about. So Jackie, how about let's take it to you for a second. I mean, so you as an astronomer at an institution that is, based in community with the public, you are at the crux of balancing like how you approach things as a researcher versus how you approach things for the general public. How does your astronomy research kind of affect where you're coming in on these conversations and the kind of work that you do at ANH? Oh, you are muted. Yeah.
Figured it out. So I like this group that's here because maybe I can preach to the choir here and say that one of the things I'd really like to change or to enhance is that it's kind of a counter or maybe a little bit of a take on what AJ was just saying. Scientists need to be better at communicating their science to each other. And I advocate for using visualization tools in order to do that, whereby a byproduct naturally is a gorgeous education tool and content. So I use a planetarium to give live presentations of data sets that are coming in that might be exciting to see spatially, or it's not as much flat images, it's a lot of three-dimensional structure. So the European Space Agency's Gaia mission was a game changer with 1 billion, almost 2 billion positions and velocities that you can break into subsets and tell in-depth stories about maybe the warp of the disk of the Milky Way, or co-moving stars, or young associations, or dust maps all together. And scientists are really good bullshitters at some level. And so you could pretend you know everything, but it's not until you're actually immersed within the data with somebody else that's like, that's my data set, that you can go on a tour and you can show them things as accurately as you can get them. I mean, I would fight that you don't need like crazy high-end aesthetics, but it's not going to help if you're just playing in Plotly. Like, that doesn't get the job done. It's why I think I fight for planetariums as immersive dome experiences that can accelerate science, that can push the researcher to work on their communication skills, both for communicating to other scientists that do need to know what it is that your result actually means, so that they can maybe make another discovery upon what you've made. And then at the same time, if the general public were even like a fly on the wall for those conversations, they can go along for the visual ride of gorgeous stellar structure that might be in front of you. A lot of times we can bring up great images to complement maybe the three-dimensional structure that we're showing. And you're engaged in what I would call the full ecosystem of science, getting it done straight out of the pipeline of a telescope, into your dome, so that you can do whatever scientific aspect you want to do within it, have it projected for yourself, contextualize it with all sorts of other data sets that have been curated, and then you've got already like, that's almost a space show right there. At least, you know, whatever, $1 million added and some cinematic bits to make it look prettier. AJ, you can do that part. And then done. We've got a story told straight from the scientist in.
Well, and there's a kind of a underlying point to something that you said there, where I feel like, and this also connects to AJ, where a lot of times you get the sense that, oh, well, this is a communication for scientists, so it doesn't have to be good. They all understand. We don't have to actually make it a good presentation if it's directed. Whereas, you know, why? I've often commented to people, like, I've never been to a colloquium between professional astronomers where everyone complained, oh my goodness, those slides were way too visually interesting and clear.
Yeah, this is the part where I would say, like, AJ's point, I don't necessarily agree with, like, scientists actually need to get better at creating these like great visuals for each other, because the thing that misses out is like the new advancement that could be made if your colleague could understand what you're doing a little bit better. Why I say like scientists are good bullshitters, like maybe you're sitting in a colloquium and you don't understand everything. You think you got a lot of it, but if somebody had done a better job with their just better presentation skills, better visuals, you might have added it up faster of like, oh, I didn't realize you were talking about the warp that I know really well because I was studying it in whatever thing you were doing. And that could advance conversation and science, and then education gets better. So all of it is circular to me.
And one thing, Jackie, that you're making me think of too is that, like, I think it's really easy for us creative people to talk about aesthetics, and forget about the accuracy side of the conversation. But like, let's talk about accuracy for a second. What does it mean to be accurate? Like, these scientists know their data sets well enough to know that the data sets are making assumptions, right? Or that the data sets have gaps in them. But then they try to present them as if they're like infallible. That's not true of everyone, but that's definitely a thing that I've experienced. And it's sort of like, okay, well, every step that you take to get from the telescope or from the supercomputer to a video, people are making decisions that are stripping away information and adding information. And so, like, to some extent, what accurate is subjective. And so what you actually mean when you say accurate is you mean I want people to see the numerical values that I consider to be important. But so much of experiencing an image is subjective as well. Not just creating the image, but watching or looking at the image is subjective. And so people are going to make meaning out of what they're looking at, but it may not be the meaning that you intend for them to make. And so a lot of what I think is important about aesthetics is giving them sort of a experience that's curated, that hopefully they will take away what you want them to take away, versus just putting like raw numbers on the screen.
So I'm curious, because again, and because each of you are coming at this differently, are there any examples you can think of where you've run into some of this tension between what someone is trying to say it wants to do accurately versus trying to do it well or beautifully or something? Are there any anecdotes or war stories anyone can share about that?
I just recently had some clients. It was a group of scientists who wanted an image created for some kind of educational textbook. And it was of a black hole. And there were a few problems that we ran into, and a few battles that I lost. I included gravitational lensing in the imagery, and they did not want it. For whatever reason, which I said, are you sure? Isn't this for an educator? They're like, well, it's not what we're talking about. And I said, even if you're not addressing that phenomenon specifically, it seems important to include it in your educational image in order to not confuse the people that are, reading your book. And they just, for whatever reason, I lost that battle. And I think sometimes scientists think too literally in some respects. So for example, for that same image, they were going to do a spectral plot associated with the image, and they wanted each of the elements for the image to directly connect to some plot on their graph, and they wanted to color code it. So of course they wanted all the colors. They wanted every single color in the image. They're like, oh, make that part purple and that part green and that part yellow. So they wanted the whole rainbow, and I love rainbows. But in this case, it was sort of a conversation about, well, what is the focus of your image? What is the focus of what it is that you're trying to tell folks? And color plays a big role in that. It can either pull something back to the background or bring it forward to the foreground. And if you have all the colors in the world, people are not going to know what they're going to be looking at. So I won that battle. So at least there's one battle won. However, it was still a bit disappointing about the gravitational lensing, but it's surprisingly some folks are not there yet with that when it comes to black holes.
Well, I have to say, I mean, you've one of the points you made, and it's something that has occurred to me again and again too, is the idea of both bringing a problem to the table, but then trying to be prescriptive on a solution. And sometimes it's much more important to understand what the problem is, but not have the researcher also try to solve it for it. And that's where that trust comes in, right? Like, no, just tell me what the problem is, and let me find a better way to solve it than just, your prescription. And I deal with that a lot. But on black holes, I got to say, so AJ, I think maybe you've had some experience dealing with like art versus the science way of doing black holes.
Yeah. Oh God.
Briefly.
Yeah.
We could spend a whole 30 minutes on that, I imagine. But
yeah. So I joined Double Negative to work on Interstellar, specifically to work on the black hole called Gargantua. And something that I think not even all the VFX artists working on the project knew at the time, but that we sort of eventually found out, or like Kip Thorne was the scientific advisor on the film, and he came in and gave a lot of lectures about the science of the black hole. The the black hole in Interstellar is like on the very boundaries of what's possible. Like they really pushed it as far as physically possible while still arguably being able to say that this is a representation of a real black hole. And so like the gravitational lensing that you see in that black hole is not characteristic of 99% of the black holes that are observable in the universe. But it was beautiful, right? Like it was a lot of fun to create an image that looked like that. And it was really engaging, and it sort of dipped into this idea. People have talked about the idea of like computer graphics as a solved problem. Like where do we go beyond photorealism? And theoretical photorealism is kind of like one of the frontiers. And so this was like a really exciting foray into theoretical photorealism, something that we know should look like something, but we've never actually observed it. But then you can also see kind of some aesthetic choices that were made even in the quest to make the most realistic rendering of a black hole ever. They chose not to have redshift in the coloration of the black hole. So so there's a bunch of like there's papers published, there's books published about this, that when they were testing in the R&D phase of this, they realized that like one sort of the right side of the black hole would look a different color than the left side, but that felt really asymmetrical, and the director was like, kill it, like we're not doing that because it will confuse people, right? Like there's a threshold in which someone is like willing to go with you on the cinematic journey, but at least according to Christopher Nolan, that redshift element was a step too far. So there were a lot of choices that were made in favor of accuracy and aesthetics. It was a sort of a giant balancing act, which is something that you actually, I was really lucky to experience in Hollywood, because Hollywood doesn't always err on the side of accuracy.
Your two stories kind of are like at odds of where normally you'd expect it to fall. You'd expect the scientists to be insisting on perfectly accurate, and the Hollywood be like, no, I just want it to look cool with lens flares.
Yeah. No, it was great. And it like, then in sort of future projects I've done with black holes, you can see the influence of Interstellar, because everyone's like, where's the lensing? Where's the lensing? Where's the lensing? And it's like, the black hole's this big. Like, you're not going to get any lensing.
So, Jackie, where does Hayden Planetarium fall on black hole visualization? Is that something that you guys have dealt with?
We have a black hole theater, which hasn't been used in years. I don't even know when the last time they used it was, but we actually just came up with...
Is that a metaphor for having a very weak projector, so it's very dark in there, or is it...
It's a room. It's on the floor of the Hall of the Universe when you walk in on 81st Street, and it fits about 25, maybe 50 people on benches, and there was a screen. It's super old school. It hasn't been updated in 25 years. Ryan Wyatt might be able to speak more to it, because he might remember when it was being developed and then put in. And they had a movie that would demonstrate something, but I don't even know that I ever saw it, because it was older, and then I don't think that it stood up to the standards that it could have or should have. Anyway, so it's gone. And we just went through this conversation here as we're deciding on what the next space show is that the museum is going to, AMNH will put out. And one of the topics that was pitched was black holes, but it died a bit because we didn't think we could do a whole show on something that is so visually like it's a black hole is by definition isn't giving you a ton of information at the black hole itself. So you gotta go into all this extra complexity to get the science, the fun education portion of the science story in. You could do like orbits of stars around it and all of the things that the black hole is doing. But from a visual perspective, I would say black holes is definitely a challenge. I'd throw in one that shouldn't be a challenge, but is a constant debate. And that is the nighttime sky and what it should look like. So everybody kind of has I shouldn't say everybody, visualizers, and maybe many people on this call have an opinion about how bright the Milky Way should look. how any given star, and stars are a fascinating thing to try and do correctly, where you give them the color that one on a given nighttime outside under X conditions that we're going to call average, you would see this star a little bit more orange and this star a little bit more blue. And colors of stars are really hard. So we get into a constant debate here about, did we get the colors correct? Do they look close enough? And I'm definitely one of the first that punts, and I'm like, close enough. I think we're good. Like, why are we going to spend 8 years working on the colors? But I get how some of my colleagues and friends that get more in depth on the Viz side, so maybe AJ or Mel, I don't know if you guys would do this, but like really zone in on like, I need these colors to look exactly the way that they would. Because that's a wormhole, pun intended, you can go down where I think you're going to spin your wheels forever, because no two people will probably ever see the nighttime sky the same. I just think it feels anecdotally like we all see a slightly different, we see color a little bit different.
Well, on the color topic, you hit that's the pet peeve of mine when it comes to star colors, because I have had to fight scientists repeatedly on not making red dwarf stars deep, lurid, totally saturated red, because they just aren't. And sometimes I've gone with TRAPPIST-1, I actually had to push back on the team, like, oh no, make it red. It's a really cold star. It's like, here is the SED. Here are the visual band passes for red, green, and blue. It isn't red, it's orange. I was like, oh, you're right. So at least with scientists, you can confront them with data and they'll accept that. I mentioned we're it's just about time to wrap this up, but if anyone had any questions or to toss to our esteemed panelists, this is the time to either drop it in chat or raise a hand. And if not here, okay, so Jeff just dropped something in. For the whole panel, in the spirit of aesthetics versus accuracy, another dichotomy I run into is the perceived tension between art versus science, myths about left versus right brain, logic versus creativity, etc. What are some strategies used in your work to recognize those tensions while also breaking down mental silos and engaging audiences in the full spectrum of art and science, logic and creativity, aesthetics and accuracy? And do that all in like 3 or 4 minutes.
So
I'd love to jump in on that one, mainly because I actually talk about this a lot when it comes to my fine art work, because my work is conceptually connected to science topics. I do get scientists coming to my artist talks, which is really great because they're coming into spaces that they normally don't come into. And they always kind of say like, oh, I'm a scientist, I'm nothing like an artist, but I think that's really untrue. Having seen both sides of those coins, both people really dig deep into their research and become singularly focused, and really become a craftsman of their tools. And so I think we're both coming from things, and there's creativity on both sides as well, because I feel like scientists don't feel like they're creative, but they're coming from their own experience as well. They're reading and interpreting data in a creative way that's based on their history, their experience, their skill. And so it's not as subjective necessarily as art is, but it's still, there's a way to look at the world and look at their data that has this similar pathways that artists can take within trying to interpret the directions that they want to go with the conceptual nature of their work as well. So, I mean, I really think that we're the same sides of, or different sides of the same coin, or whatever the saying is. But yeah, I think there's a lot more connection than we give each other credit for.
I just really quickly, I'll add to that I think that it's actually really easy to sort of gradually ease people out of their comfort zones. A lot of the scientists that at least I've been working with recently are really, really receptive to more aesthetic treatments. But I always try to approach it as like, let's just try this thing. We can throw it away if we don't like it. You know, like obviously there are some budgetary requirements and it takes more time to experiment, but overall we very frequently come up with like kind of a creative version of a data set and a more didactic version and post them both right next to each other. And usually people respond really positively to both, and we kind of get some nice interplay there.
Have your cake and eat it too. I like it.
I'll add on this that for the past 7 years, I've had an artist in residency working within my research group. And that just happened to be a nice thing that happened where I participated in this thing called LIGO, which was an attempt to pair scientists and artists together and giving them 6 months to create something that we then had we had a show, but at the end of it, the artist that I brought on, Jenny Balls, who brought me in, did not want to leave the group. And I was like, why would you? You can stay forever if you want. And we do field trips to art museums that Jenny organizes. And there have been several events that Jenny has put on, which has changed the way my team of postdocs, grad students, undergrads kind of see their own science. And so the collaborations that I'm a big advocate for stopping this, like, I'm a right brain, I'm a left brain, I'm not a creative, I'm a practical, because it's completely untrue to call a scientist a non-creative. They're absolutely, like, what we have to do every day, it's insane. How can you not consider yourself creative? You're literally staring at the most exotic, weird stuff that the universe can create and trying to figure it out. Like, you can't sit there as a practical, pragmatic person and stare at the stuff. So realizing the creativeness that you bring also helps you answer science questions in a different way. You think of a different avenue. So I'm a big advocate for merging artists and scientists together at every possible option. Not everybody can have an artist in residency in their research group. There's plenty of opportunities for scientists to collaborate in whatever local city you're in or local community that you participate in. And I would encourage that left, right, and center.
Well, I think that is a fantastic note to wrap up this conversation, even though we could easily keep going for 2 hours. Thank you to all of our panelists, everyone. Some virtual applause to our group here, and we will have this online so people can view it later. And honestly, later, if people would like to continue this conversation, that's one of the things the Google group is good for. Throw out your ideas and get some conversation rolling there. So thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon. And then it's time for us to roll over. I'm going to switch us out of the theater mode. There we go. And now I want to switch back to our lightning talks. And we have 2 people today. We had 1 cancellation, but we have 2 contributors today who kindly volunteered to share some interesting ideas. Let me check. Is Miguel Aragon on? I think I saw you earlier. Please, you can turn on your camera. And everybody else, if you can turn off your cameras, and we'll just switch it over to Miguel. There's Miguel. Hi there.
Oh, hi. Hi, Robert.
All right. Well, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce your topic on the universe in virtual and physical representations.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So just because of the time, I will only focus on virtual representations, and maybe in another opportunity we can talk about physical representations. So I'm going to share some experiences with virtual worlds. I am an STEM professor at UNAM, Mexico. I just very briefly will tell you my background. I work in galaxy formation, large-scale structure, and artificial intelligence, but I really love visualization because I think it's very important to be able to present what we are doing to colleagues and also to the general public in the best possible way. So I want to share a couple of things, just a couple of ideas. First, I want to share with you this very nice project, which I think is amazing. About now we are seeing this democratization of virtual reality. A few projects, Frame, Babylon, and 3.js. So I'm using a lot of Frame. With that Frame, you can construct virtual sites, virtual worlds, just with a little bit of JavaScript and some text files. So for instance, we have here visualizations of an intra-void filament. You can point your phone to get to the website. Here, a cluster with some galaxies around it and some filaments. And we are making also a map of the local universe. So let me just show you a little bit the map of the local universe. So you can watch this in your phone, or also VR with your phone, or with a virtual reality headset. So we are constructing the map. We are slowly adding more elements. So you can see here, for instance, let me see. I have the Milky Way, Andromeda. We have the Virgo cluster, and this is really cool because it's made in such a way. It is a scale 1 megaparsec per meter. So you can actually walk around the local universe and visit the Virgo cluster and look around. This is a really, really nice project, and it's growing all the time. So I also want to share. Okay, let me just hide. Okay. I want to share a project that I worked a couple of years ago. This was for Oculus. They have a project, a program called Oculus Launchpad, and we learned how to make games and how to create stories and try to make a little game at the end. So I made this 2-minute game that I'm going to release very soon. We call it Dark Matter Cathedrals. It's more like a small experience. I will just show you the experience. It is 2 minutes long, and I try to be both precise and artistic as possible. Okay. This is running on Oculus. And if you notice, the galaxy is 3D. We are actually able to do 3D volume rendering.
A quick question for you. Is this
Yes.
an interactive experience on Oculus, or is this a pre-rendered?
Yes.
It's interactive.
Yeah, everything is interactive. You can look around the galaxy. This is a full volume rendering. The volume rendering takes most of the power of the Oculus, actually. It also drains the battery quite fast. But we managed to fit a full 3D galaxy there. You can move around, and you can touch the galaxy, which is what you are doing. And now you're going to see the rest of the cosmic web.
I think, yeah. And to Stephanie's point, yes, this is a recording from within the headset.
Yes. Oh, yes, yeah. So this is not pre-rendered. You can actually look around and see everything in 3D. And it's pretty amazing because the scene is like 100 meters high. Okay, so this is a little like a demo that I built for that. Then I just want to share very fast, how do we go from, how do we create this kind of map? So we have a bunch of dots with some properties, and then we want to create maps of galaxies. So I'm using artificial intelligence because that turns out to be a really nice tool for this. So we can do matching between the dots and the properties and images of galaxies. So we can pass galaxies through a neural network, then map these galaxies into latent space and do the matching in latent space. So here we have one galaxy, and then we have several matches that we can. So this will be like a galaxy in the real universe, and this will be a matching from a template of a limited number of galaxies, because we cannot load millions of galaxies, millions of images on an Oculus. So we are also cleaning images using neural networks. Here on the left, we see an image as it comes from the telescope. Then after we clean it, and it looks really nice. There are several images from DESI survey, and after we clean it with neural networks. So we can do, we have a very high quality template now with 930 galaxies. So that's something a bit more artistic. For me, it is very important to be as accurate as possible, but I also like to have some, I'm not an artist, but the universe in itself is beautiful. So this is a beautiful video. You can watch it in YouTube, Sky Cabin called Nerve, where there's a dancer, and the dancer is leaving threads of like a ribbons. So you can actually do the same. I added some ribbons to this 3D map, and now what you see now is fully interactive. So you can fly around the cosmic web. This is a map of 80 megaparsec radius. There are 80,000 galaxies. And you can leave threads of light behind you. So I'm already talking to somebody from the local university in Ensenada, from UABC. who is in charge of the dance department, in the art department, to have some dancers do a three-dimensional dance with some music. So here you see how it will look. So this is a small test. So we have two persons there moving around. You see the trajectories, like these little blue trails, and they are moving, or they are flying in this three-dimensional map of galaxies. And the idea is to have music, and then the dancers doing shapes in space with some music. And also something a bit more serious. So we can also do interactive tagging of structures. This week, actually, I'm using this tool. So we have a good part of the Sloan Digital Sky Survey on the headset, on Oculus, and we can tag cosmic structure like filaments, clusters, voids. So you see there on red the little cursor, and then you can. I'm just making a figure with my hands, so we can select regions interactively, and we can do this for several users at the same time. And that's all. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to share some of the things that we are doing in virtual universes.
Oh, that is just amazing work there. Later, if you could put the URLs of some of these projects into the chat so people can track them down more easily. The 3D Galaxy project, is that something that we can get to on the Quest, like the secondary store?
It's not there, but I will put it there. Yeah.
Okay, because I think a lot of us would like to try that out on our Quest now that you've shown it.
It's a lot of fun. I can spend hours playing that thing.
And one question from Jeff for you on whether you found any hardware issues working with Oculus, specifically the processing power being somewhat limited compared to Linked.
Yeah. So the hardest part of this project was actually the technical part, how to fit as many galaxies as possible. So I do all kinds of tricks to fit 80,000 galaxies, and then how to do volume rendering for the first galaxy that you see. The first galaxy is a full volume rendering, so you can look around the object in 3D. And so I had to write shaders, of really highly optimized shaders. And this is pushing the boundaries of Oculus. Even actually, you get too close to the galaxy, you start skipping frames because the machine just cannot handle so much. Oculus is basically a mobile phone, just a mobile phone that you put in front of your face. So yeah, there are a lot of technical problems, technical limitations.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure in the future we want to see what you've done with tactile work as well. But in the meantime, yeah, if this goes up onto the Oculus, whatever that secondary store is, for more expensive stuff, that would be fantastic, because I know people would love to play with that. Thank you, Miguel. And now let me hand it over to Jeff Ney, who will update us on NASA's eyes, and again, in the theme of 360-degree content.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Ney. I work with the NASA Museum and Informal Education Alliance, and I'm just going to stick the URLs in the chat right now. Feel free to play around with them, and I guess I'm just going to share my screen real quick. All right, so this one, let's start with eyes, because whether you've used eyes before or you're brand new to it, this is the visualization platform that JPL works on, and it's gone through a lot of updates in the last year. So if it's been longer than a year since you've played with it, please do check it out. The URL is eyes.nasa.gov, very easy to remember, and we hope we're going to keep it. Those of you who are on the inside of NASA know that we're going through a whole web modernization thing now, but we're hoping that at least this will redirect to where it's going to be in the future. But yeah, so originally, just a few years ago, we just had this basic one, the Solar System Interactive that I'm showing you here, but it's just expanded exponentially. We now have a fully in-depth solar system. This one was a more basic version that's meant for web embeds, like iframe embeds. If you have a website and you want to embed the whole solar system, this one's meant for that. But we now have a fully featured version that's closer to what eyes used to be when you had to download it and install it. Eyes on Asteroids, hopefully everybody celebrated the Bennu return of the samples. Eyes on Earth is a really great one. Eyes on Exoplanets for anyone who's into exoplanets, and just a whole bunch of other stuff. Just the one that I noticed literally this morning because I was prepping for this. We now have the DSN now for the near Earth network, near space network. So these are brand new. I don't honestly even know when they published these, but these are all the near space satellites that we're communicating with right now. If I can move this, there you go. Yeah, so these are all there. And those of you who don't know about the Deep Space Network, this has been on for a while, but this shows you all the places that NASA is communicating with. So this is all part of the NASA EYES platform. And I can just show you real quick over here. Let's go with solar system, because this is pretty relevant if you're doing any sort of eclipse events. They actually released this module in the last 2 weeks even. So this one is for the annular solar eclipse. They are going to make one for the total in April, but there's a whole feature set of visualizations right here that you can use. And the best thing about EYES, this new version of EYES, is that it's totally compatible across all devices. Anyone with a modern web browser, whether it's your phone, tablet, PC, Mac, Linux, whatever you want, anyone can just pull this out. If you're standing in the grocery store line and you hear somebody saying, oh, I heard about the eclipse, you can pull this out and show this to them right there on your phone. And you can go behind the moon. There's all these different things they put in. You can turn on and off the shadow cones. There's just a whole bunch of stuff they created for this. And hopefully Psyche will launch next week. That's here too. And you should be able to time travel down here. You can time travel fast forward. You can rewind up to a certain point. It's just a fully featured visualization tool now that you can use in your tool belt. Eyes on the Earth is also very, very fun. Fully live view of the Earth. You can change all the timing and all that stuff. And one other thing that I love to show people is these new stories that they curate. The team curates stories all the time, and if you just want to see Hurricane Nigel, here it is. Just click on it, and there it is. Exactly where it should be. So super simple, super easy. It's meant to be just click and go, no matter where you are. And I have asked, they are working on an offline version for anyone who is interested in that sort of thing. And just in the last minute, I'll also mention this page. If you search for NASA 360 VR, it should be like one of the first ones. Don't just search for NASA 360 because that's a whole separate thing. But NASA VR 360 is just a collection. Might have to click it a couple times, but it's just a whole collection of all of the 360-degree media that I could possibly find that is NASA related. And I just kind of put it on here. One day I'll make a nice UX for it, and it'll be nice and engaging and whatever. But for now, this is mostly just for us, just for visualization professionals who just need it, who just need the files. So,
so Jeff,
again, depending on when you've, yeah.
Jeff, there was one question for EYES, is whether or not it can be accessed in VR headsets like a Quest, or if that's something that you're looking at supporting in the future.
Yeah, there's a specific, that's a good question for the development team. I haven't heard anything about Quest development, but if you can view a website on it, which there are some apps where you can theoretically do it. I don't think it'll be fully immersive though. I've asked them about full 360 rendering and stuff like that, and they're like, well, it's coming, maybe. All right. Yeah, thanks for that. I can't see the chat when I'm sharing screen, so. And just, this is a good URL to know if you need a 360 background of Mars, for example. That one's actually from the Planetary Society, but I have all the different ones that we just released. We just released this one last week, and there's a bunch from the ESA. There's a bunch of sections for each NASA center. Just check it out. And if you ever need something, or if you ever want to share something on here, if you made a 360, feel free to send it to me, and I'm happy to just add it. Again, it's just a repository for professionals, really, because it doesn't look very pretty. All right, and I think I'm done.